When I walked into the house that night, it smelled like someone else's life. The scent wasn't mine, clean, woodsy, and military issued. It wasn't Rachel's, with her bubblegum shampoo and vanilla candles. No, this was something different, an expensive cologne that didn't belong here. I dropped my duffel bag near the door, the clunk of it on the floor barely registering. I'd come home early, too early, apparently. The weight of that bag was nothing compared to the suspicion tightening my chest like a noose. The house was quiet, but not in the comforting way I'd been yearning for during my deployment. It was the eerie kind of quiet, the type that makes your instincts hum like a taut wire. Stepping into the kitchen, I froze. 2 wine glasses sat on the counter, one with lipstick smeared across the rim. Amanda's lipstick, red and precise. Next to it was an open bottle of Cabernet, half drained, with a cork jammed hastily into the neck. My eyes darted around, cataloging everything. Her robe, Amanda's favorite cream silk robe, was draped carelessly over the couch. But it wasn't her lounging in it. It was him. He was shirtless, sprawled out like he owned the place, his bare feet on my coffee table. For a moment, he stared at me, and I stared back. He looked startled, sure, but not guilty. That smugness. It dripped off him like the cologne I'd smelled the second I walked in. "Can I help you?" he asked, finally sitting up. Before I could respond, her voice called out from upstairs, cheerful, flirty. "Be right down, babe." I clenched my jaw. The next sound I made wasn't a word. It was the sharp, unmistakable crack of my knuckles tightening into a fist. "Who the hell are you?" I growled, stepping forward, my voice low and dangerous. Amanda stood frozen for a moment at the top of the stairs, clutching the towel like a shield. Then, like flipping a switch, she transformed. Her initial shock melted into something colder, a carefully crafted indifference that didn't match the chaos she'd just been caught in. "David," she said, descending the stairs slowly, her tone controlled. "I thought you weren't coming home until next week." I didn't respond. My eyes stayed locked on her, taking in every detail. The wet hair, the flush on her cheeks that wasn't from embarrassment, the faint scent of someone else's cologne clinging to her. My stomach churned, but I stayed quiet. I didn't trust myself to speak yet. The man on the couch shifted uncomfortably, but his discomfort didn't last long. Instead, he stood, squared his shoulders, and smirked at me like he had nothing to be ashamed of. "You must be the husband," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "She told me you wouldn't be back for a few days." Amanda's head snapped toward him, her eyes narrowing slightly. A silent exchange passed between them, one I wasn't supposed to catch. It told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't the first time. I dropped my bag to the floor, the sound reverberating through the room like a gunshot. I could feel my fists tightening, my training whispering in my ear to stay calm, assess the situation. But every instinct screamed to lash out. "Where's Rachel?" I asked, my voice sharp. Amanda hesitated, looking at the floor. "She's at my mom's," she said, barely above a whisper. "Why?" Amanda met my gaze briefly, then looked away again. "I thought it would be nice for her to spend some time there." My chest tightened. The one thing keeping me tethered, the one reason I'd endured months away from home, was my daughter. And now I was finding out she'd been sent away, not for her sake, but so Amanda could entertain her lover in peace. "Nice," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "How thoughtful of you." The man cleared his throat, stepping forward like he was part of this conversation. "Look, man, I think you need to chill. You're blowing this out of proportion." I snapped my head toward him, leveling him with a glare that made seasoned soldiers think twice. "You need to leave. Now." For the first time, his smug confidence wavered. He glanced at Amanda, looking for some kind of reassurance, but she said nothing. She just stood there, arms crossed, watching me like I was the one who had disrupted her life. You heard me, I said, stepping closer. My voice was calm, but my body language left no room for misinterpretation. Get out. Before I make you. He muttered something under his breath, grabbed his shirt from the back of the couch, and made his way to the door. As he left, he paused to shoot me one last smirk. You should thank me, he said, his voice full of venom. She was lonely. I didn't move, but my hands shook with the effort it took to restrain myself. I slammed the door behind him, the sound echoing through the now silent house. I turned back to Amanda. She stood in the same spot, her expression unreadable. You want to explain this? I asked, my voice low and steady, though every word felt like it could snap. She sighed, running a hand through her damp hair. What do you want me to say, David? The truth would be a start, I shot back. Her eyes flashed with something, defiance, maybe. Fine. I was lonely. You were gone for months. What did you expect? My jaw tightened. I expected you to be faithful. I expected you to be the woman I married, not this. I gestured around the room, to the wine glasses, the robe on the couch. She bristled, crossing her arms tighter. You don't understand, David. You're always off saving the world, and I'm stuck here alone. You think that's easy? You think it's easy for me? My voice rose, and I didn't care anymore. You think it's easy to be halfway across the world, dodging bullets, worrying if I'll see my family again, only to come home to this? Amanda didn't answer. She just looked at me, her expression hardening again. Where's the Amanda I married? I asked, my voice breaking. The woman who used to tell me how proud she was of me, who couldn't wait for me to come home. She's tired, David, Amanda said, her voice suddenly soft. She's tired of being second to your job. Of feeling like an afterthought. For a moment, I almost believed her. But then I thought about the man who had just walked out, the smugness in his voice, the confidence he had in being here. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a choice Amanda had made again and again. I shook my head, stepping back. You don't get to blame this on me. Blame it on whatever you want, she said coldly. It's done now. I grabbed my bag and walked to the door. Where are you going? Amanda asked, her voice suddenly unsure. To figure out what the hell comes next, I said without looking back. When I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me like a slap. The illusion I'd held onto for so long, that my family was intact, that my sacrifices had been worth it, shattered around me. I climbed into my truck, gripping the steering wheel as my mind raced. I'd spent years serving my country, prepared for any enemy. But nothing in my training had prepared me for this. I couldn't sleep that night. The air in my truck was stifling, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, Amanda's indifference, her defiance. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, fighting the urge to march back into the house and demand more answers. But I knew I wouldn't get any. Not yet. At sunrise, I made the call. Ryan, I said when he picked up, his voice groggy but instantly alert when he heard mine. I need your help. Name it, he replied without hesitation. That was Ryan, a brother forged in the fires of war. I told him everything, coming home early, finding Amanda with another man, the lies she tried to spin. By the time I finished, Ryan's voice was sharp, cold. We'll get to the bottom of this, he said. She wants to play games. She has no idea who she's messing with. Over the next few weeks, Ryan and I worked together like we were back on a mission, except this battlefield was my life. Ryan handled the tech, he always had a knack for digging where people didn't want him to, and I focused on gathering what I could from inside the house. The first bombshell came when Ryan sent me an email late one night. Subject, you're gonna want to see this. Attached was a spreadsheet, a detailed breakdown of transactions from our joint account. Flights to Miami. 5-star hotel stays in Vegas. Jewelry stores I'd never heard of. She's been draining your accounts for years, Ryan said when I called him, my hands trembling with rage. It's not just for one guy, either. Looks like your buddy Josh is just the latest. There's 2 others I've tracked down so far. Both of them were enjoying the benefits of your hard-earned cash. I didn't know whether to scream or laugh. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had fought to come home to, had been financing her affairs with the money I had saved for our family. The second blow came from Rachel. One night, as I was tucking her in at my mom's house, she hesitated, clutching her stuffed bear tighter than usual. "Dad?" she asked softly. "Yeah, sweetie. Why doesn't Mom like being home anymore?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Rachel's eyes welled up, and she looked down at her bear. "She's always gone. She says she has to work late, but sometimes she doesn't come back until really late. And when she's home, she's different." I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to let my anger show. "What do you mean by different, Rach?" "She's on her phone a lot," Rachel whispered. "And she doesn't talk to me much anymore. I think she's mad at me." My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. Rachel thought Amanda's neglect was her fault, and that crushed me more than anything else. "You listen to me," I said, pulling her into a hug. "This is not your fault. None of it. You're the best thing in my life, and don't you ever think otherwise. Got it?" She nodded against my chest, but the damage had been done. Amanda hadn't just betrayed me, she'd failed our daughter. Ryan kept digging, and what he found painted an even darker picture. Amanda hadn't been as discreet as she thought. One of the men, a sleazy real estate agent named Derek, had been careless with his messages. Ryan found text exchanges full of promises, gifts, and plans for getaways while I was deployed. Another, a wannabe influencer named Kyle, had been bragging to his friends about his sugar mama. Ryan managed to get screenshots of their conversations, where Kyle laughed about how easy Amanda was to manipulate. "She didn't just cheat on you, David," Ryan said during one of our late-night calls. "She let these guys treat her like a joke. Like a damn ATM." The anger burned hotter than ever, but it was no longer aimless. It had a target now, a purpose. Back at the house, Amanda acted like nothing had happened. She went about her days as if I didn't know the truth, as if her betrayal wasn't unraveling everything we'd built. I played along, careful not to tip my hand. One night, I casually mentioned Rachel's comments about her being gone so often. Amanda shrugged, not even looking up from her phone. "I've been busy," she said. "Too busy for your daughter?" I asked, my voice sharp. Her head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "Don't try to guilt me, David. You're the one who left us for months at a time." My fists clenched under the table. "I left to serve our country," I said, my voice dangerously low. "What's your excuse?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stood and walked out of the room, her silence louder than any words. By the end of the 3rd week, Ryan and I had everything we needed: financial records, text messages, even photos Amanda had sent to her lovers. It wasn't just a web of lies, it was a tangled mess of deceit, greed, and neglect. But the most damning evidence? A video Ryan had pulled from a hotel security camera, showing Amanda walking arm in arm with Josh into a room booked under her name. "She's done," Ryan said, sending me the footage. "There's no coming back from this." As I stared at the evidence laid out before me, the anger in my chest began to cool. It wasn't gone, it never would be, but it was focused now. Calculated. Amanda thought she could get away with everything, that her lies would go unnoticed. But she had underestimated me. She had underestimated the man who had faced enemies far more dangerous than her. For weeks, I let Amanda believe she was still in control, that her lies had gone unnoticed. I spent my days preparing for a confrontation she wouldn't see coming, combing through the mountain of evidence Ryan and I had gathered. The texts, the receipts, the photos, all of it painted a clear, damning picture. When the time finally came, I didn't confront her at home. That would have been too easy, too emotional. Instead, I made sure she would face the truth in a setting where she couldn't run or twist the narrative to suit her. Amanda walked into the lawyer's office wearing her usual armor, a tailored blazer, high heels, and an air of defiance. She didn't know why she was there, just that I had insisted on meeting her for an important discussion. "David," she said briskly, sitting down across from me at the polished oak table. "What's this about? I have a busy day." "You're going to want to clear your schedule," I replied, sliding a thick folder across the table toward her. She hesitated, glancing at me before opening it. Her eyes scanned the documents inside, screenshots of her messages with Josh and the other men, bank statements showing the money she'd siphoned from our accounts, and photos from the hotel security camera. Her face went pale as she flipped through the evidence, her hands trembling. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "This," I said, leaning forward, "is the truth. The truth about where you've been, what you've been doing, and how you've been funding it. This is everything you thought you could keep hidden." Amanda looked up at me, her eyes wide with shock. But then the mask slipped, and fury took its place. "You went through my things," she hissed, slamming the folder shut. "You spied on me." "Don't play the victim," I said sharply. "You brought this on yourself." Her mouth opened, then closed as she struggled for a response. Finally, she settled on the oldest tactic in the book, denial. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I was lonely, David. You were gone for months at a time. I needed someone to talk to." "Someone to talk to?" I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Is that what you were doing in those hotel rooms? Talking?" Amanda's face flushed red, and for a moment, she looked like she might lash out. But then her expression softened, and she tried a different approach. "David," she said, her tone shifting to one of desperation. "We can fix this. Think of Rachel. Don't tear our family apart over one mistake." "One mistake?" I shot back. "Do you even hear yourself? This wasn't a mistake, Amanda. It was a choice. Over and over again, you chose to betray me, to betray our family. You tore it apart the moment you decided we weren't enough for you." Tears welled in her eyes, and for a split second, I felt a pang of something, pity, maybe. But it wasn't enough to stop me. "You already did this," I said, shaking my head. "I'm just making sure you face the consequences." In court, Amanda put on the performance of a lifetime. She cried freely, painting herself as a victim of circumstance, a lonely wife abandoned by her husband for his career. "He was never there," she sobbed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "I didn't know how to cope. I made mistakes, but I never stopped loving him. I didn't know what else to do." The judge listened, impassive, as her lawyer tried to bolster her case with claims of neglect and emotional distance. But then it was my turn. My lawyer presented the evidence calmly and methodically, laying out the timeline of Amanda's affairs and financial deceit. The text messages, the photos, the bank statements, it was all there, irrefutable. Amanda's sobs grew quieter as the weight of the truth pressed down on her. When we presented Rachel's testimony, the courtroom fell silent. My daughter's words, spoken with the honesty only a child can muster, painted a stark picture of Amanda's neglect. "Mom was never home," Rachel had said in her recorded statement. "She was always working late or going out. Sometimes, I didn't see her for days." By the time we finished, Amanda's tears had dried, replaced by a look of utter defeat. Josh, her lover, made a brief appearance in court, presumably to support Amanda. He sat in the back, avoiding my gaze, his smug demeanor nowhere to be found. But when my lawyer revealed that Amanda had named him as a co-conspirator in her financial escapades, he bolted. "Coward," Ryan muttered from his seat beside me, and I couldn't help but agree. In the end, justice was served. The judge ruled in my favor, granting me full custody of Rachel and ordering Amanda to repay the money she had stolen from our accounts. She was left with nothing but the consequences of her actions. As we left the courtroom, Amanda tried one last time to reach me. "David, please," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll change. I'll make it right. Just give me another chance." I stopped, turning to face her. For a moment, I saw the woman I had married, the woman I had once loved with everything I had. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. "You had your chance," I said quietly. "And you threw it away." With that, I walked out, Ryan by my side, leaving Amanda behind to face the wreckage of her own making. Amanda might have walked out of that courtroom with her head held high, but her fall was only beginning. She thought the worst was over, losing custody of Rachel, the court-ordered repayment of the money she stole, and the public revelation of her infidelity. But Ryan and I had other plans. "You ready to finish this?" Ryan asked one evening, a sly grin tugging at his lips. "Let's do it," I replied. One of Amanda's former lovers, Derek, worked in the local government, a cushy position that came with just enough power to inflate his ego. Ryan had uncovered something interesting during our initial investigation. Derek had a habit of cutting corners, skimming a little off the top here and there. He'd gotten sloppy, leaving behind a paper trail that Ryan easily pieced together. An anonymous tip was all it took. Within weeks, Derek's name was plastered across the news, his misuse of funds laid bare for everyone to see. He was fired, disgraced, and drowning in legal troubles. Amanda, who had been tied to him both professionally and personally, wasn't spared from the fallout. Then there was Kyle, the influencer who thought he could brag about his escapades without consequences. Ryan tracked down the private group chat where Kyle had shared photos and stories about Amanda, treating her like a trophy instead of a person. It didn't take much for those screenshots to find their way to the very circles Amanda had spent years building her reputation in. Suddenly, her name was on everyone's lips, but not in the way she had hoped. The once respected wife of a soldier became the subject of whispered gossip at every PTA meeting, neighborhood barbecue, and community event. Her house, the one we had built together, became a symbol of her failures. The debts from her reckless spending, combined with the court-ordered repayments, forced her to sell it. She moved into a small, cramped apartment miles away, far from the life of comfort she had once taken for granted. As for Rachel and me, we thrived. I sold what little remained of our old life and relocated us to a new town closer to my new job. The fresh start was exactly what we needed. Our new home wasn't extravagant, but it was ours. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Rachel and I began therapy together, a lifeline that helped her process the betrayal and understand that none of it was her fault. She opened up in ways I hadn't seen before, her natural curiosity and resilience shining through. "Dad," she asked one night as we cooked dinner together, a new ritual that had become our favorite part of the day. "Do you think Mom's ever going to be okay?" I paused, stirring the pot of pasta sauce. "I don't know," I admitted. "But that's not something we can fix. That's up to her." Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I'm glad we're here," she said after a moment. "It feels peaceful." And it was. Amanda tried to reach out a few times in the months that followed. The calls started with feigned concern for Rachel but quickly turned to her pleading for forgiveness. She insisted she had changed, that she wanted to repair the damage she'd caused. "I'm not doing this for me," she'd say. "I'm doing it for Rachel. For us." But every conversation ended the same way, with me telling her firmly that there was no going back. One evening, I received an email from Ryan. Subject, last piece of the puzzle. It was a link to a local news article about Amanda. The headline read, "Scandal-ridden former soldier's wife declares bankruptcy." I stared at the screen for a long time, emotions warring within me. Satisfaction. Regret. Pity. Maybe all three. When I called Ryan to thank him, he shrugged it off. "She did this to herself, man. You just made sure she faced the consequences." Rachel and I continued building our new life together. We filled our days with laughter and our home with warmth. Each passing day felt like a small victory, a reminder that we were moving forward, leaving the pain behind. One night, as we sat on the couch watching an old movie, Rachel turned to me. "Do you think she regrets it?" she asked, her voice soft. I thought about it for a moment before answering. Maybe. But even if she does, that doesn't change what she did. Rachel nodded, her eyes drifting back to the screen. "I think we're better off now," she said. And she was right. Amanda claimed she wanted to fix things, but I knew better. The only fix was walking away. So, what do you think? Was I too harsh, or did she deserve every consequence she faced?